Good evening, Year 12. On your learning mat, you will find the following question. I want you to read the question twice. The first time, simply read it and take in what the question is trying to ask you. The second time, I want you to try and get rid of any irrelevant information that you think you can. All you need to do is when you find this irrelevant information, just draw a line straight through it to indicate that it is indeed irrelevant. Press Next to check your answers. Now the relevant information for this question is located at the very top, and to be honest it usually is. Getting rid of this information will help you focus a little bit more on the question at hand, and it won't confuse you. Next thing I'd like you to do is read the remaining part of the question, and can you highlight any command words that you find. When you have found a command word, can you draw an arrow from it and annotate next to that arrow what that command word actually means. This is crucial if you're going to be able to answer the question effectively. Press Next to check your answers. Now there are two command words in this question that you should have been able to find. Explain and outline are the two. Explain means to set out the main reasons or purposes, and outline means to set out the main characteristics. I want you to read the question again. Now can you use a different coloured highlighter pen to highlight any qualifier words that you'll be linking your answer to. Press Next to check your answers. Now the qualifier word for this question is performer. So I know for a fact that during my response I'm going to have to link my content to a performer of some kind. Now it's quite good that the performer isn't named, so that gives me a little bit more flexibility in terms of who I can apply my answer to. I want you to read the question again, this time using a different coloured highlighter pen again. Can you highlight any topic words that you think would be useful? Click Next to check your answers. Now for me, the topic words which are essential here, first of all is the term attitude, and then negative attitude and the fact that it needs to be changed. Those for me are probably the four main topic words that I would need to be aware of. What I'd like you to do now is use another highlighter pen and finally highlight the amount of marks available. Quite an easy one, but press Next to check your answers. Now whilst I said highlighting the amount of marks is an easy task, which it is, the reason I'm asking you to do it is because I really want you to think about the spread of assessment objectives and how many marks would be awarded for each. Now in your AS exams you're going to be faced with several 8-mark extended answer questions, and the weighting normally goes 2 for AO1 or recall, 3 for AO2 or application, and 3 for AO3, which is analysis or evaluation. That's obviously vital if you're going to achieve full marks for your particular question, as you're going to have to know what you need to write. Now let's look back at the question. We've got rid of lots of text there, and if we were only going to use the highlighted words, we would still understand what the question is asking us to do. Explain attitude, outline negative attitude of a performer could be changed. So even though all the other text that makes up that particular question, if we were to get rid of lots of it and only use our highlighted keywords, it shows that we can now be a bit more focused with our answer. Press Next for your next set of instructions. Now we're starting to get into good habits about answering these questions and what we do before we even put a pen to paper. I want us to look now at level 4 pupil response for this particular question. So this student achieved full marks, 8 out of 8. On your learning mat you have examiner's commentary, you have their answer or the pupil response, you have the mark scheme, and you also have the banded criteria. I'd now like you to get 3 highlighter pens and have one colour for AO1, one colour for AO2 and one colour for AO3. For the examiner's commentary, all I want you to do is just read the introduction, and underneath the heading that says the answer, I just want you to read points 1 and 2. Now when you're reading point 2, I want you to use your AO1 colour pen to find the definition of attitude and the 2 strategies that have been identified to change a negative attitude, and I want you to highlight them on the pupil response. When you've done that, it might also be a good idea to use the same pen to highlight that content in part 2 as well. Advance the slide to check your answers. Now all I've done is I've used a yellow highlighter pen just to highlight the points in the answer part 2 where I've been able to find the definition of attitude in the pupil response and also the 2 strategies that are used to change a negative attitude into a positive one. Now I've also gone one step further. I've also then used the yellow pen again just to highlight in the mark scheme the points that were actually made. That then is just a nice indication for me when I come to give an overall mark at the end. Now as you can see in the examiner's commentary, this is a really good start to a particular question. Highlighting key terms, writing them down, giving definitions is a fantastic start to any answer, and it does therefore lead on to a really well structured answer a bit later on, as you're going to find out. Press next to find out your next task. Okay, the next paragraph we're going to look at is going to be the second paragraph, and this refers to point 3 on the examiner's commentary, and is paragraph 2 on the pupil response. Now the interesting thing about this paragraph is that a number of assessment objectives are actually met. I'd like you to use your same colour highlighter pen for any assessment objective 1s that you can find, and a different colour for any assessment objective 2 that you can find. You are able to use your mark scheme to find these, and also I recommend that you use the comments from point 3 from the examiner's commentary like I've already said. Now you might have to use your notes to help you find some of the information or just to refresh some of the information in your head. Once you've found the assessment objectives, you can click next to find out your next task and the answers. Now if we cast our mind back to paragraph 1, cognitive dissonance was mentioned in paragraph 1, but there was no definition given. As a result of no definition, only part of assessment objective 1 was met. Now we have a definition in paragraph 2, assessment objective 1 can now be ticked off. In terms of assessment objective 2, there are several points which are met within this particular paragraph, and it's met in different ways. It's met by a combination of further explanation. For example, it changes the cognitive part as new information is given, as well as given an example. So for example, a rugby player being told by their coach that ballet is good for strength. Because the original command word was outline, which is setting out the main characteristic, any explanation or example could be credited as assessment objective 2 for this particular question. Press next for your next instructions. I would now like you to complete exactly the same task for paragraph 3. Use 2 different highlighter pens, one for assessment objective 1 and one for assessment objectives 2. Use the examiner's commentary and your mark scheme to find out which assessment objectives are met in paragraph 3. When you find them, highlight them in both the pupil response and on the mark scheme, so you can tick them off as you go, so you can see what sort of mark this answer would get. Press next for your next set of instructions. Now we're going to start addressing some assessment objective 3, which is the analysis. I'd like you to read paragraph 4, which is point 5 on the examiner's commentary. And again, I'd like you to use a highlighter pen to highlight any assessment objective 3s that have been met in this particular paragraph. I recommend you highlight it in the examiner's commentary, in the pupil response, and also on the mark scheme, so you can sort of tick it off as you go and give an overall mark at the end. Click next to check your answers. Now, as you can see from the examiner's commentary, in this particular question you pick up assessment objective 3 marks by linking 2 factors to show the impact of how an attitude can be changed and affect future performance. And the example that has been given is cognitive dissonance can change attitude in the long term, as new information like the benefits of exercise may make them exercise on a regular basis, or by being successful, which is the reinforcement element, with increased strength, might also promote an attitude change. To enhance the final point a little bit more, I guess you could mention about whether they would continue taking part in activity or exercise, or whether they might stop. And I think that might be one way of improving this statement a little more. Press next for your next instructions. For your final task, I want you to look at the final paragraph, use the examiner's commentary, use the mark scheme, use any notes that you might have, and I'd like you to do the exact same thing. Can you find any assessment objectives within this paragraph? Can you highlight them both in the examiner's commentary, in the pupil response, and on the mark scheme? So then when you come to the end to see how many points are made, it's nice and easy for you to give an overall mark. Press next for your next set of instructions. All you now need to do is turn your piece of paper over. All your instructions now are going to be written on the other side. Follow them really closely and make sure they are read very carefully.